Hey folks, Tyler Edlin here today, and we've got a great episode for you guys. I have the very talented Jessica Levi and Zhao Fan Zhang, two personal friends and master illustrators, and we're going to go through everybody's submissions. We're going to pick out 10 that's on theme and on point that we liked, and we're going to break them down, give you guys some feedback, and it's going to be a great way to kind of learn and really kind of push your storytelling. We're going to show where rendering is on and where it's not working, and hopefully we'll get everybody to that next level. So let's begin.
Hey everyone, today we're going to tell you about a really great course, Cinematic Illustration in Photoshop, from our very own Zhao Fan. If you want to improve your visual storytelling, well, this is the course for you. It's got an emphasis on dark, moody, atmospheric, and cinematic design and illustration with an in-depth narrative spin. Now the narrative focus here is what makes this course perfect for anyone wanting to learn illustration for games, editorials, and book covers. The course covers the process from start to finish, from building narrative, thumbnailing, and cinematic composition, to lighting and color selection. You also get the full brush pack and detailed instructions on how to utilize the key brushes all the way to their fullest potential. Remember, this course is only available on Wingfox, so head over there and check it out today.
Hey guys, we're back with the Brush Sauce Theater critiques. This is our re-recording. The last file got corrupted and lost into the abyss, but thank you both, Jessica and Zhao Fan, again for joining me in this session tonight.
Yeah, it's always better the second time around. We clarify what we think about
And
things.
and this whole challenge for this month. This theme was yours, Zhao's, and you had internet and power issues last time, and you got kicked after like three.
Power out.
Yeah,
So
your
that
power went out for your whole building, right?
so
Yeah,
anyone that's waiting for feedback, we're sorry. We've been plagued with technical issues left and right.
It's true.
So for those of you that are watching this after the fact, thank you, and you're not aware what the challenge is. Zhao, you want to tell us what, since you came up with the idea?
Yeah. So the prompt for this month was creepy but wholesome, or wholesome but creepy. So it was to take a scene or scenario that would normally be considered wholesome, but make it creepy, or to take a creepy idea or characters, creatures, but then make them do something wholesome. So it's a contrast.
All right, and
I
so
love this theme.
it's a
It's
brilliant
such a
theme.
fun theme.
And for those, if I didn't mention it already, we're also sponsoring your video for Wingfox. You did an awesome in-depth tutorial on an illustration on basically how to create a very similar imagery. So that's awesome. Thank you, and for both Wingfox for the sponsor and you for making that awesome video for them. So it's all one big circle.
That was pure coincidence, but thank you.
It is.
Yeah.
It was just a pure coincidence when I asked Wingfox what video they wanted me to talk about. It happened to be Zhao. It's like, oh yeah, well you're on this video anyway, so it all works. But yeah, you, for those that in the channel that aren't aware of Zhao Fan's work, well, really good, and I'll show some of the work up on screen, of course, when we have the video sponsor. But yeah, anyways, let's start off with Melims. Anyway, this is a beautiful piece, guys. We all know it. I love this. This hits the theme, but it really hits the theme because there's subtlety to this. There's a lot of really great subtlety to this,
Yeah.
Yes.
right? It's always
I
just
absolutely love
yeah.
I absolutely love the subtle storytelling in this. It's such a on the surface a simple image, and then the more time you spend with it, the more rich it becomes, which is really nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
my biggest thing was with it is that it's so subtle that it's almost like we could afford to be a little lighter in some of the extremities, right, of this picture. It's because it is really dark, and once you jack the brightness up, which I'm trying to find the one I want, you could start to see there's actually a lot more here. So maybe there's some fact that maybe it's the calibration between my display and the artist's, but anyway, for today, it's yes, we got to jack the brightness up, and now all of a sudden we could start to see quite a bit more. And there's a pinwheel, what's it called? Over a baby's
A mobile.
mobile. That's that's the word I was looking for. And of course, now we can see the eyes are all creepily red, and of course, really just staring at this poor innocent child. But this is just beautifully
It's really
crafted.
well designed. Yeah. And I think it's a similar thought process as to what Tyler was having about lighting the image. But I really love the way you have the light coming in from the top of the painting,
Hmm.
like filtering in. It creates a really nice sense of like a world outside of the painting, but also a really interesting way to break up shapes throughout the painting. And I kind of wish we could see a little more of that, a little bit like the mobile and things like that. Like I think
Yeah.
there's some lost opportunity to use that light, like that very strong directional light, to give us some more interesting negative shapes and stuff throughout the corners of the painting. And it doesn't have to be strong, just enough to like, define some of those shapes. Let some of those shapes come out and give it a sense of dimensionality because it kind of flattens a little bit because of how dark it goes everywhere else.
Yeah, I agree with that idea. There's a lot of depth in this shot. Like there's a lot of foreground, middle ground, and like background elements. It's just because the values are so similar.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Everything sort of blends into one. But yeah, I like the lighting that Tyler's having right
You
now.
see, it's like simple things like that that'll pop the shape up,
Mhm.
the light from out the crib, and then you can
Yeah.
honestly do like the inverse of that well, and bring like a subtle hint of like the room light. So like let's say it's a dark room, right? If you go in with like a bluish purple, and you can subtly, and not like I'm doing here, right? This is not subtle, but maybe oh, that's why, because I'm on a weird brush setting, right? But like if we create that like a little more subtly, and then actually come over to here to, just kind of gently add that in, just so you can just see a little bit of that silhouette. It really
Mhm.
can start to add even more depth, right, to this picture. And at least in that case here, but you could do similar things throughout. How do you guys feel about the grain or the amount of grain? Because I know it's intentional here. This wasn't an accident, so it's not like a technical issue. But does that work for you? I'd probably say for me like just like a little bit less, because scary images do work really nicely with grain, I think overall.
Yeah, it's hard for me to comment on that just because like looking at it through the Skype call, I'm getting a lot
Yeah.
of pixelation. So it's hard to see like the surface quality of that. When you zoom in, I can see more and it looks like a lot. Yeah, that's a fine balance is to find a texture that kind of unifies it, but you don't want it to become so much that you notice it. You almost want it to be invisible.
Hmm.
Like it's still there, but you don't want it to be something you notice while you're looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like to add grain to my stuff, but I think it depends on where you want to lean with this one. Like, if we want to lean for sort of more of an illustration or illustrative thing, then maybe it's a bit too much. But if you're going for like the baby monitor feel, I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but
Hmm.
like
Oh,
A little
baby monitor
staticky.
look, very staticky. I think that could work too. It kind of depends on which direction you
Yeah.
want to go.
Either way, I think we all love the grain, and it fits the genre and the image, and it gives it, that nice hand painted, hand drawn look. I think it adds to that for sure. Like it's almost like not like charcoal, but like graphite or color pencils. It can add to that. I'd say maybe like 20% less. Overall would balance it out nicely. But yeah, beautiful piece nonetheless.
there was real quick just one thing I wanted to add. It's a subtle thing, but I kind of want to see a little bit more of a curve or dimensionality along the line that's coming across her face. The light that's coming across the
Oh,
face is almost as straight as it is on the pillow and bed behind her. Yeah, so just following that three-dimensional form a
uh,
little bit more will just make it a little more dynamic and interesting, and more believable.
yeah, and that's something to even again exaggerate on occasion 10 to 20%, just to like for the reason you just said, to help really push the form.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Moarlux. I have sorry if I butcher any of your names. I'm not great with them. Never have been. Probably won't be. But here we go. This is really cool.
Oh, how cool.
There's
I
something
like this.
wholesome going on here for sure, and this 300% is creepy.
Yes.
So
Uh,
the first thing that kind of stands out to me is the color choices. I feel like there's a little bit of like a washed outness that happens where everything kind of just gets kind of
Mm,
greenish because you've got this yellow light and then you've got the blue shadows. And so a lot of it is just kind of all blurring together to make the picture feel a little like monochromatically green. And I think some of that also has to do with surface quality because the way that the rocks are painted versus the skin versus the hair versus the glowing light, everything kind of has the same spectral quality. So it's making everything feel kind of samey and clay-like. Whereas if you work on the materials a little more and push the different reflective qualities, you can lean into the things that are reflecting the yellow lights more, or the things that are got more strong highlights and things like that will give you more in a range of temperature shifts to play with, as well as like value differentiating.
Yeah, Zhao, how do you feel?
Yeah, I think there could also be a little bit of bounce light on the other side. Head.
Oh yeah, like over here.
Yeah, because right now there's one light source, but I feel like I think this is a cave, right? I think maybe
Yeah.
the cave might reflect a little bit of light.
Even so, right? Artistically add that in, right? Like all the YouTubers that are better than me that have like 3-point light sets up to get like the hair light, a much better key light, right? These are all artistic decisions for like the exact reason you said, because you can really push form and make things aesthetically pleasing. It'll add appeal to the idea and to the picture.
Especially like the back of the baby's skull, like skin and things like that is going to be very soft and absorb light. So like the back of the skull would be reflecting kind of the cool light, the ambient light of the cave around it. It wouldn't go like a hard black like that. Yeah. So even as soon as you start taking the blacks out, it looks more like skin.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like the skin here and the form gets really blown out, and it like we're not sure what this source is of light. It could be fire, it could be magical miasma or something like that, but it's very strong. Like it's a very strong light source either way. And it's completely taking around like that form and flattening everything. Like there's almost like no halftones here, and halftones is the best way, right? Of course, to really describe form is that you have areas of light, areas of shadow, and that sweet spot is all the halftones, and it loses that structure for sure.
And I think part of that is also coming through in their use of lines, because there's certain areas that they've tried to paint the volumetric shape, and then there's other areas where they're just leaning into putting lines in, like around the stomach and the legs in particular. And I think some of that also is just, you want to think like artistically, like how do you make this form look beautiful, and putting like harsh lines across the stomach is going to like, it's not going to make an elegant shape or a shape that's visually appealing. And the sense of like the face and the woman holding the baby is like, you get the impression you're trying to paint a beautiful woman with a child. And so when you think about the type of marks you're making, does it reinforce that idea or does it detract from it? And the hard black lines across the stomach and things like that detract from it. So finding ways to like show the softness of the form and the natural curve of the form rather than the hard graphic lines, I think would serve you better. And you can get away with more of that, excuse me, if you have more halftones and more value range to work with. So you're not relying on the hard black lines to define the shape.
Zhao, do you want to add any other comments before we...
It could just be me, but like when I draw extra limbs or body parts on things, I like to try and think about the underlying structure a little bit.
Solid tip.
The eyeballs that I'm seeing here, they kind of do just look like they're drawn on top of the surface of the forehead skull. Maybe we could think of a creative way to like insert more eyeballs onto her head by like creating more cavities in her head. It's just something to think about. I mean, it's a valid way to put this together because there are different horror dark fantasy sources that actually do this, and they kind of just stick eyeballs on the forehead. But I don't know. I think it's more fun to think about that kind of thing.
Or like, how would the shape change? Like, how would the skull change if there were multiple eyeballs on it versus if there's, the skull stays exactly the same as if there were 2 eyeballs.
Yeah.
Makes less sense.
Less is more often enough, and again, thinking of that structure, like you said, will add to the, not like the legitimacy, but the believability with the creature or the fictional type of entity you're designing, for sure. Good tip. All right.
Versatility.
Yeah, let's check out the Hue submission here. This is great. What a fun kind of change of pace this is. It's bright. It's more line art based. And ever so creepy.
I love
The drawing in this is wild. It's super fun. You can kind of see like there's a bunch of monitoring stations going on back, and you get this really nice, rich texture drawing here. Really cool. This is a different style, I think, than like all three of us really don't lean so much into this aesthetic. So we'll do the best we can in regards to your.
Yeah,
we're not gonna try to convert this, you to us, or like saying this style for the style's sake is wrong. But just that's our disclaimer, is that we do come from more of like a form based painting approach, and this is line art based, so it's just a different way to do a picture.
Yeah, I always am hesitant when I offer feedback on this, and like to offer like with a grain of salt, just because like I'm not so familiar with this, and so some of the things that like I would think, like I'm not sure if it's like, oh, this needs work, or this is specific to this style of art. But one of the things that's kind of catching my eye with this piece is there's some parts I think are really effective. So like all of the texture and noise and the lines that are in that red area, that visual complexity is really interesting, and it feels really well designed and well balanced. And then some other areas against it, like the way that the face is drawn, almost feels like it goes against the emotion of the painting or the scene. And I don't know, again, if that's a style thing for this style of art, but the face looks very like it doesn't tell us any more of a story about what's happening here or not. And then when you contrast that with the backdrop, which feels very blown out and painted versus drawn like everything in the front, it's the juxtaposition of it is a little difficult for me.
I mean, I think anime faces all kind of look like that. I'm not gonna lie.
It might be a style thing.
But so I think the story here is there's all sorts of like these carnivorous plants, and this person is really happy and stoked to be feeding it a dead rat, I think is the story here. But
Or the dead mouse, yeah.
So commenting, I guess, if we want to talk about line work, I think the line width is too consistent throughout the entire piece. Because when you work with lines, you need to emphasize where there are shadows and where an object is in front of another one with using like heavier lines. So in areas where there's like ambient occlusion and like darker areas, I could say that like maybe add some more darker lines to emphasize the occlusion. The stuff in the foreground could be outlined with a thicker line. The character could be outlined with a thicker line. So I think that might work. And also what Tyler's doing is the next thing I was going to say is the light source was a little bit inconsistent, but it looks like it's a top light. And that's exactly what Tyler's doing.
Right, like with this style, you don't necessarily you don't need to render form. You don't need to make things look three-dimensional. But this is for me at least severely lacking in groupings of light and shadow, which supplement this aesthetic, or this style really, really well. And it just is almost like completely devoid of that, making a really flat-looking, kind of picture. And I'm just doing this very quick, so please, pardon the crudeness of this, but it's just like this is all in the shadow, and then this is light, and you could decide where those points are, really, from a creative standpoint. So as long as you're consistent with it, you can really get in there and get, like, even like this, like we could have like the spotlight above, right, like some of these plants, and then you just get in there way more specifically than I did, because I just did this super crudely. But right, like underneath here you could have like a little shape of a shadow, or like if you want to show this plant, then you could say like underneath all of these are like little shadow shapes. You don't have to paint these like three-dimensionally, but just choose like families of light and shadow that are consistent with your scene, and it will add a whole other layer of depth and appeal, to your picture.
And another thought I had, I agree completely about making the values more interesting and creating interesting shapes with the values. But another thought I had that I think is also flattening it is the perspective. So you have a lot of like perfectly horizontal lines and perfectly vertical lines. You don't have any sense of like an angle or the space receding other than like
Yes,
here's a
none.
flat plane, here's a flat plane behind it. And I think it would be like basically like a very simple two
Mm.
point perspective. And I think just turning the camera, giving us a little bit of a sense of like depth or lines and angles in the space is going to make it a more interesting painting or composition.
Yeah, it's lacking diagonals. Everything is either like left and right or up and down. Even the background elements are everything is like that. No angles at
Yeah,
all.
it gets very samey. Even like the carts in the back or the racks in the back are all like the same horizontal lines with the same shapes on them, the same size. There's no variation in anything. And so like maybe just think more about designing the space behind them, and the perspective or angles of the room will make it more visually interesting and immersive.
Anyone else want to add anything before we go on? Thank you for your submission.
No, you're good.
Great. That's what I
Yeah.
like
I
to
hope
hear.
that's helpful.
All right, we have oh God, this is a mouthful. Sorry.
I'm glad you get to say the titles or
Yeah,
the
because you
names.
guys are it's just out of focus on this on the call to but Zuri Suart. I'm gonna stop there. If I try to re-say it, I'll butcher it. Anyway, yeah, great piece. This is awesome,
So spooky. Love it.
I
right?
love it. This is great.
Look at this. We can see this in all of its glory here. It's really direct and brutal storytelling, you know? Like
Yes.
this picture literally does say a ton, and it hits the theme really, really well.
Yeah. The more you look at it, the more you see, and
Yeah.
I really like about an image.
Glasses.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is.
Well, so one of the things that jumps out to me is the use of white and the way that the white kind of flattens out throughout the
Mm,
painting. Like there's different areas like the tablecloth, the dolls, the fabric. And so the value structure is kind of like in your mind, is like you're painting white. And so it is a very bright value. And so it kind of flattens out the image, because rather than it feeling like a light surface that light and shadow are wrapping around, it's like here is a flat white square or diamond shape or doll shape. And so that silhouetting, because you're not modeling the form on the lighter surfaces, is kind of flattening the image out. And so if you look at like really well painted pictures of snow and things like that, like white can have a lot of color in it and a lot of shadow in it and still read as white. And especially in a scene that is this dark and three-dimensional, I think there's a lot of room to play there.
yeah, there's some lighting inconsistencies with that. I'd probably say
Hmm.
is its biggest weakness. Like it's kind of almost inferred that there's a window off to the left at a frame that would be a night window because the room is dark. But there's not like, like that cool blue moonlight or anything. Everything's kind of universally very warm. I tried to cool some of that off, but it's almost like this color here should be like what that would have be effective, like if with like a little bit of that dull cool light hitting it. See, but everything is just like blown out to like this really warm level, and these are just really weak candles, so it's like it's not going to throw an intense kind of light on things. So I think just
Yeah.
being delivering on a consistent lighting scenario is a really great way to improve the quality of your picture. And then like if this is a window light coming out, then like this is gonna have a cast shadow, or like all of this will be in shadow kind of down here. Everything's got a weird kind of exposure level to it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think the shadow directions aren't quite consistent either.
Mm-mm.
So, like the vase on the table versus
Yep.
the girl's shadow.
Yeah,
Um,
that's there. This is there. I was doing my own shadowing, so we're all adding. But yeah, either
Yeah,
way,
the base up there is like almost directly to the side.
just take like a
Hmm.
little extra time next time when you're planning that out and hit that consistency. Like, see, like this has got a big shadow, but then this doesn't have shadow. Then there's no shadow here. Consistency is the best selling thing, because you can make up whatever you want with lighting as long as you're consistent with it. That's all that matters.
Yeah, and another thing that keeps catching my eye in this painting is the shelf up at the top left corner, especially because it has that big white skull. So when you're designing the composition, you want to think about things that are leading the eye through the painting and the ways that they're either pulling the eye or pushing the eye. And like you want to think more as like they're veins or channels that are moving your eye through the painting. And so if you have things like that are very eye-catching, that are up towards the edges of the painting or the corners, especially if they're isolated, there's not a lot of leading lines there, they're going to keep pulling the focus away from where you want the eye to lead in the painting. So when you're designing the composition, just think about that. Think about the abstract shapes that you're making and how they tie into that visual flow throughout the painting.
Yeah, Zhao, would you want to add
Mhm.
anything?
Yeah, so I think my only thing here is I really like the storytelling, but I think there could be a better way to frame the shot.
Yeah, like the camera angle, right? The perspective setup. It's kind of very
Yeah,
passive.
I'm thinking like, what if you took the camera and just like stuck it on the table in front of her? You know, like I
Way
think that would
better.
be an
Way
interesting
better.
shot. Yeah.
We don't see the legs in the corner, but at this point, it's like you don't really even need to see these legs. It's almost overkill, and
Yeah.
essentially not at the expense of a very neutral, dull camera shot where it's just like we're kind of a person standing in this room looking at all this, but it's also not empowering or signifying anything, any of those important elements either. So,
Yeah.
very good point, Joe. Thank you for dropping that us on here. They have good camera angle does a lot. All the
And
important stuff
I
is
think
here.
just one last thought that I had is the character, because thinking about the camera shot made me think about like the storytelling and how the scene makes us feel. And I'm looking at her face, and her face is actually less painted than like some like props in the room is, as opposed to like the face being like well rendered, there being any sort of acting or expression on the face. Like it's really reduced to kind of like basic shapes and lines. And that's the heart of the painting. And so I feel like if there was any point you were gonna, the doll, I think the faces of the dolls have more character and are more realized than the main character's
Hmm.
face. And so like if there was anywhere you were going to spend time designing and like painting to a higher level of finish, I think the acting on her face would be really important for this scene. And even if it is like a peaceful, serene thing, like we should see more of that. Like we should see more detail, more like the face should be more finished so we can actually see those qualities in the face.
Yeah, there's a couple more
Like that's
hours
that's the heart of the piece. Sell it.
and an upres
Hmm.
for sure.
Hmm.
All right, you can't trust it. All right, next
It's
up,
true.
Donnie on the floor. Welcome back, Donnie.
Ah, yes. I remember this one.
I like this shot. I like this
Yeah.
one.
My boiler kicked on. You two just lead the way with this. I'm gonna mute myself.
Well, we can't hear it, but okay. I really like Zhao. I really love this piece. I think it's really well designed. And I love the subtleties, like the storytelling. Again, like when you look around the image and start finding things, you find more and more of the image. And I think that I really like how um, it takes a second before you realize what you're looking at, and when you do, like it kind of like pays off for the whole image. And the design of this strange, spooky, ghost-like creature coming in the doorway is just, yeah, that the impact of it is really well done. It's really well designed and executed, I think.
Yes, I really like the storytelling in this one. It's yeah, it's good. And I just realized it's an Asian household. Ha! Nice.
Wait. What's the giveaway on that? I'm not sure if
Yeah,
I
I didn't
picked
pick up
that
on
out
that.
yet.
There's a so at the on the right side there's an altar. That's an home altar either to your ancestors or like some kind of a god. I think that's a god at the top in the top shelf thing.
Oh.
And the red lights are kind of like traditionally what you put on an altar.
Nice.
So, yeah, and if you look closely, there's people like wearing the dead guy in the corner here on the left is wearing slippers.
Mhm.
Also, very Asian thing. I don't know if you guys do
I
that,
don't wear
but like,
slippers at all, but my wife lives in them, so I guess
there
we're
you go.
50-50 on that.
Okay.
How do you guys
Um,
feel about this has got a unique style to it. Like it's super even, which is good.
Yeah, it's very consistent.
But it also has shapes of light and shadow. It has, mass. The mass is rendered throughout this, and it also has, to a degree, form as well. But I'm not sure if I'm sold on the line art specifically. It does create a very
Yeah.
unique look, but I just don't know if it needs it.
Yeah, I kind of was on the same fence, and I wasn't sure whether to say anything or not because I am on the fence whether the lines are adding to the picture or detracting from it. Generally, I prefer it. I feel like for being like a painted image with lines drawn on top of the painted forms, it's more effective than many I've seen, but I'm not sure that it's more effective than it would be without them. Like when I look at the areas of the light coming in the doorway around the ghostly figure and things like that is a very effective um, area of the painting, and it contrasts a lot with the areas that are more outlined. Um, yeah,
So
when you do
this kind of
that,
gets rid of the
Mhm.
line art. I think I actually like
and
it a little
I
better.
like it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think
I
I like
think
it
that
better without the liner.
It just doesn't
it
need it.
leans into the strengths of the painting. Yeah, and the painting is strong, so it's almost like the lines detract from how strong the painting actually is.
And then that's to a lot of artists that I see's work. A crutch is the line art because they know they can't paint light or render form well. So the line art for a lot of artists out there, and this is not a knock on them. This is the facts. It's how it is. They use line art to hold the piece together. But Donnie on the floor, you don't need line art to hold your piece together. It works.
Yep.
Donnie is on the floor. I found his legs again with his slippers. So I like
Mm.
how thematic he really is on point with his name and the work this month. How do you guys feel about
Tony on
the?
the floor.
Yeah, he is Donnie on the. How do you guys feel about the entity? I don't know what to call this thing. I'm almost feeling like
I actually really love how strange it
it's
is
super
and like how
strange.
normal the bottom half is and then the top like it all just kind of melts. I actually really love it. I think it's very
I
effective.
Yeah, I'd get a little more silhouette on the bottom. Like almost too much of that gets lost out. Like
Yeah.
you'd see more of that. I'd bring some of that back. But yeah, this is super interesting, and I'd almost even want to see that pushed a little more. But that's just my wish list.
I think the only thing for me is I feel like the composition is really good, the value structure is really good, but I feel like there's part of me that's kind of looking for a darker shape in there. Like everything gets you have the nice highlights,
It's
but in the
bugged.
value range, I feel like there is kind of a sameness that happens outside of those highlight areas where it doesn't feel like there's any real shadows or
Mhm.
darkness. I don't know if you guys feel that way or not.
No, I agree. If you look at the navigator at the top, Tyler, you having trouble with that?
Oh, the file's bugged. It doesn't let me zoom it now. It's just forever
Oh,
fixed on the
no.
zoom.
Thought you got it.
Oh
PC,
no.
yeah, PC and Photoshop, right? They grow great.
Yeah, that happens to me too. You have to close and open it
Yeah, I had
again.
to straight up. But anyway, I think for the most, we want to finish your point and then we'll move on.
Yeah, I think if you look at the thumbnail at the top, it kind of there's not much of a value variation at all.
Yeah, it's
Mm.
very night or day.
Yeah, it's like two very bright spots, and then everything else is kind of a consistent solid gray. I think you can go in and probably pick out some more shapes and differentiate the darker values a little bit more. And
Like,
if you do that, then you can tone down the the light source on the left
mhm.
because I'm guessing that's the second focal
Oh,
point. It's not the
I can't even draw on this thing. Yeah, it's completely wigged out, I think.
yeah. You
Yeah, I
got
think like where that screen is from the front door, the screen I like the sense of light coming through it, but that other thing that's standing up behind it, like that could go dark, I think. Like that
Yeah, like
square shape behind the screen.
there's graphic shapes you could go like almost to like a full black on that would pop a lot of
Yeah.
this out. And my alternative solution or an addition to that would be to add like a soft bluish or greenish light, something kind of
Mm.
eerie to like front light, but subtly a lot of those front forms in there. Like there's some kind of
Yeah,
light
that
just
could work
tossing it
too.
and it hit those midtones because this really lacks a lot of those. It's either shadow or getting fully overexposed in the light there. But yeah, good piece, Donnie.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I would just caution, like, we're not saying to go crazy with it, like to go like checkerboard contrast everywhere, but just a few areas so there it doesn't feel samey, like
Hmm.
just enough to break up and give it variety.
hmm
You know what my favorite part about this piece is well, it's also a great piece about Donnie's is that I can really say the name. Anna. I know Anna, right? Did I not mess that name up? I nailed it.
You nailed it.
Perfect.
Nailed
Sounded right to me.
And to everyone here's defenses, I've written Xiaofan's name numerous times from other videos and letters and emails. Every time I correspond with you or have to post something with you or work online, I get the name wrong every single time.
Yeah.
Without a doubt.
Yeah.
It just happens. I even try to confirm it sometimes and I still mess it up. So I'm sorry.
Too many vowels.
I'm sorry for you, and I'm sorry for everybody else. Naming is not my skills. That's why I named both my kids 4 letters max, and they're easy. Right? My kids are Luna and Jet. Can't mess those up. They won't mess those up for their whole life.
Oh,
Because it's a thing. I did it. I made it.
Very nice.
Side rant. This is great. Someone start us.
I really.
think-
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. I like this one because it looks very found footage. And
Yes.
What's that? The which one? The shaky cam.
yeah,
Oh,
like
Blair Witch.
Blair Witch. Yeah.
like any other found footage horror film, where it's like you got a flashlight or something attached to the camera person. It's very front light.
I love flashlights.
And like all you can see is basically what's in front of your nose and like nothing else.
It's like
So
Resident Evil 7
oh yes.
in VR.
Yes.
Does anyone play that? It's great. This is creepy, right? What's the one thing you'd say that Anna could do to improve this even further?
So the thing that jumped out at me for this piece right away was the edges. Very inconsistent edges. And like I get the kind of like found footage, there's some roughness to it, which I like. But then like when you look at certain things like around the
Yeah.
legs, especially like where that leg is overlapping the chest or like different areas like that, like it
The
really
light.
needs to just, yeah, there needs to be some clean edges where the forms clearly end or wrap around or differentiate from each other. And I
Mhm.
think just going through the whole image and going through the edges and really deciding, is this a soft edge? Is this a lost edge? Is this a hard edge? That's going to do a lot to make this painting feel finished versus like sketchy and thumbnail-like.
Yeah, this
Yeah,
gets
and
busy.
just to add to that, I think a lot of the shading on the form could use a little bit of edge differentiation as well, because everything kind of looks soft and mushed together right now.
Yeah, there's almost too
Mhm.
soft. Everything's too soft. Like I know your work show, and even to your married Jess, you'd get up in this, with like a
I'd be
two,
painting pores.
right?
You don't
You'd
even
get
know.
a 0.4 brush.
You'd
and
be seeing like the little hairs coming out.
yeah, and you're gonna render this rib out like it's nobody's business, and you're gonna make that thing pop like it's
Hey, ribs
the-
can be sexy. Do
on
it
the
up.
on the morgue's office, like you're gonna get that looking absolutely grotesque. Get all the little highlights on there, and maybe it's got a little
Yeah,
grime.
yeah.
but-
You want to get the sense of the skin stretched over bone, and that has a certain surface quality to it,
Mhm, for sure.
Yeah.
Tough to pull
I
off.
think there's something else with this piece that I think would go a long way to making it look better quickly is just the shape. So like the shape of the bed or the shape on the wall, like they look very much like these basic geometric lassoed shapes,
Mm.
especially when you compare the edges of them against the edges of the painted
Too-
forms, like
too
the
stiff.
witch and stuff, where yeah, like they look like they're not designed. Like the bed frame itself, like what kind of bed frame is that? What material is it made out of? Like it doesn't feel like a real bed. It feels like here's a square shape where a bed
No,
goes.
it looks it looks like a video game prop when there was a lot of hardware technical limitations where like everything was either cubes or boxes. Like PS1
Mhm.
and 64 games. Everything is like a super simplified version of the actual thing.
I was gonna say it looks like a blender block in and just slapped a cube in the corner.
Hmm. Yeah, like the rug can have design, this floor can have design, this bed frame can have
Mhm.
design, the sheets can have, in your case, how you'd embroider the hell out of like all that, make it look fancy.
Oh yeah.
I think the other thing is the creature or the witch needs a little bit of the anatomy needs a little bit of work.
Yeah, it gets like a little wishy-washy in I think one too many places that it's either a gap, in the knowledge or lack of reference, but like I understand. Yeah.
The the feet especially, I think it really, like, the feet themselves are the area that really stand out is not working anatomically.
It is,
And
way too
just
big.
how emaciated she is, I would expect like just below her rib cage, everything would just get sucked in because there's nothing there.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's like a
Yeah.
weird, ambiguous sack of flesh here, right now. Like this should be like really, like
Yeah, like
decide
there.
these shapes.
And then they'll jut back out on the pelvis and like
Mhm.
Yep.
and
Yeah,
that kind
the stomach would be all like emaciated and hollow.
Yep. There's some work to be done there. That's for sure.
But I think overall, like the overall impression of it, the composition and
It
the lighting
hits.
structure and
It hits
everything,
hard.
it hits. That instant impact is there. It needs polish. Like it needs to be
Yes.
zoomed in,
Right,
and
like
refined.
it works great as a thumbnail. You get some good clicks on that because it does read and it does work. But it's like it will offer little to someone that wants to be like a huge fan of this or potentially get something like this on their wall. I know there's people out there that would because the subtlety it doesn't reach as far as it could. I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, just needs more love. That's all. A little more time.
Speaking of love, look at the love in this picture. Good transition.
Speaking of love,
This is the most
how
wholesome
sweet.
picture I've seen all day.
lots of love.
God, this is creepy.
I love it.
They all got like the Voldemort nose, but they're not like right. They're not vampires, right? That was my first.
I'm pretty sure we're looking at zombies. I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're zombies.
Yeah, my kid loves zombies. This is great. Like you can.
Yeah, I think this one really hits home on the theme, I think, of the challenge.
And it's one of the few entries we've seen, if any, so far that really, pick out the emotion in the face of the subject matters.
Mhm.
That's largely been lacking so far. And you could see the glee and the joy there, and that's what we like. That's what we show up for. So magical.
That's true.
It's so magical. What's your biggest tips that this person, Astra, can?
So, I think the thing that stands out to me about this piece off the bat is the surface quality. Everything feels very clay-like. Like the materials of the skin, the book, the cloth, the hair, everything feels like it's made out of the same sort of clay-like substance. And so really getting into like the quality of different surfaces, the way skin reflects light versus hair or fabric, I think would go a long way to selling this piece.
Yeah, I'm going to get it. Zhao, you go. I'm going to get a little reference on that.
Yeah, I think the colors are a little bit one note.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of look like you applied like a color to like a grayscale image or something, and then I guess didn't really go back and add more local hues.
Oh my goodness, where'd it go? Sorry. I got scared for a second.
Yeah, I think it needs a little bit more love in terms of the color direction.
And that's adding, I think, to Jessica's problem too, is that there's a sameness here that looks certainly unintentional. And part of that starts with the evenness of the color, and that trickles into the evenness of the materials, and it makes everything overall very, very, flat, right? Like if you look at, like, let's say, I'm gonna bring them up, like a Donato image, right? Like that has very specific, right, textures across his subjects. You'll see in, like here, for example, right, like this one, like the metal feels like metal, the skin and the hair, right? There's three separate distinct texture qualities. So this is probably a better example. Let me just zoom in on that sucker, or just take me to an endless web portal of things I'm not going to get to. Almost in new tab. Here we go. What? I said new tab. All right, but this we'll have to use with this. This is pretty good, right? You can see the metals. The skin has a lot of little subtlety there. The fabric, right? You get the fabrics, the flesh, and basically everything in between, like the metals and the paper and the parchment and stuff. They all feel very, very different visually. And that's, I think, the biggest weakness of your piece.
And I think it's like, if you're thinking about materials, the main difference in materials, there's surface texture, but there's also the way that it reflects light. So just think about the specular quality of the surface. skin reflects light in a very specific way, and it's very different than the way that fabric reflects light, or that like the book,
Yep.
the hardbound reflects light. And so just looking at those different materials and trying to understand the way in which they reflect light or that the shadows form on them is going to go a long way to making them feel like different surfaces.
Yep, that's the biggest thing. And then like, dialing in on the detail of that hand because it's really close and it's a hand, and then pulling out like the different layers and the colors that appear in like undead skin because right, like it's got like different layers of rot and stuff. As gross as that
Oh,
is, it'll boost the quality of the picture.
that actually reminds me of something I said the first time we recorded. So I'll go back and repeat myself because I think that it actually is helpful. But like speaking of surface quality, skin in particular, like skin is actually really interesting if you look at it. It has a lot of different colors in it, in the light, in the shadows, in the way that you can see the blood under the skin. And I think there's a lot of missed opportunity here in the skin itself, especially because so much of the painting is about the faces and the acting in the faces. I think there's a lot of missed opportunity to show like different colors in the skin, like what parts of the skin go more bluish or go into shadow, what parts might have a little bit of pinks or red or blood left in them, or like the greens, like are there like veins and stuff like underneath the skin? What color are those veins and how does it affect the surface of the skin? There's a lot of room to play with beautiful color transitions in their faces in particular. And I think that that'll add a lot of variety and visual interest to the painting.
Yeah, and to add to that, I think last time I said like the level of rot was a little bit inconsistent. It might have been
Mhm.
intentional, but their noses are gone, so I kind of expect that other parts of them would be gone too.
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, they look a little too plump right now. I think that's probably one of the things that I would probably change, like add a few holes somewhere or
I think you mentioned like the hands last time, like maybe the hands go a little more decayed or varied in their composure.
yeah, like I don't know how many dead people you've seen, but I'm imagining you've probably played video games, right? So can I just use that?
Yeah, good point. All right, yeah, great submission though. Thank you, Astra. You really hit the storytelling and the theme of this challenge.
Very fun piece.
All right,
Mhm.
now we're up at Arnie. Arnie, how you doing? I like this. This is great. It's fun. It's whimsical. You got some zombie possessed rabbits here. I don't know, like there was some confusion. I think there still is some confusion with me on this as like
Yeah,
these feel like there's like giant carrots, but is that a carrot and a dragon, or a dragon made of carrots, or is the dragon underneath the carrot? I am having some
yeah. I think
big
we were like
confusion elements here.
thinking it was like carrots holding it down, but we couldn't tell like if it was actually like part of the. It took us a while. I remember we were sitting
Well, I
there
don't
for a
think we
while trying
ever
to
really
figure
even
out.
decided, right? Like
Mhm. Yeah.
what we landed on. Shao, what's your take on this? Let's get some fresh.
Yeah, because I think this was when the power went out, so she was like,
Yeah,
she didn't get to get in on those.
I remember seeing the thumbnail for this and I was a little bit confused because yeah, I don't really know. I think there's the dragon's tail is around the giant carrot, so maybe the dragon is actually hoarding some kind of carrot treasure or something. And then this leader bunny who's on top of the dragon's head is now mind controlling the dragon to like roast carrots for them or something.
Got to make that stew.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think there was definitely some like storytelling discrepancies here where we were like sitting here trying to like maybe this is what this is. And it took us a while to realize, oh, I think the rabbits are controlling the dragon. Oh, I think the dragon might be like tied down or like compelled to roast carrots for them. So there's definitely in the design of the image itself, like to find ways to bring the storytelling more clearly into place
Yeah,
so that there's less confusion about what's happening.
great brushwork. Nice technical execution in many areas. I like the aesthetic of it. Yeah, so it's got a lot of great
I love the
qualities.
shape of bunnies. Sorry.
Yeah, I think the colors are really nice too. The like warm orangey light and the purple shadows I think is really effective. There's some really beautiful like little passages in the
You,
painting with
you know,
that
you get
lighting scheme.
you get this nice subtle like blue highlight on the eye, and then like a little hint, or like, I should say like a tease of that over there. It's almost like I'd like to see that a little bit more among, some of the other clarity things, just to kind of really push the rendering on the form, like a little bit of that rim light kind of just put like a little further throughout. I think could be really nice. See, like even on these, like tapping into like this range on some of those, I think could be great. But yeah, this is fun. It's definitely playful.
Something that before you close it real quick, something that has been throwing me off about this piece is that like big carrot on the left looks like it has two blue eyes. And I'm not sure if that's intentional, like down in the foreground. Yeah, because it's like
It's
I
kind of
don't think
harsh,
the
yeah.
carrots have eyes. I don't know if that's meant to be a highlight, but it definitely is mimicking the way that you've done the bunny eyes. And so it's very like distracting and kind of more confusing to the storytelling if the carrots are also
This is-
alive
That'd be so
with
funny.
eyes. Like,
Thank you,
I'm
Orny.
sorry.
If monstrous carrots wake up, start to eat bunnies. That'd be funny. That'd be funny.
Oh, this is chapter 2.
Zabawa.
I
Look
like
at
this one.
This is visceral. This is raw.
Mhm.
This is heartwarming. Look at that. You can feel the age in those in those
Yes.
arms. I like that.
Yeah, I could tell this is reference. It's like you need to get the sagging skin on the arms.
Get the whole bat wing.
Yeah, the very specific anatomy that actually like it makes a lot of sense. Mhm.
There's some parts to like the shadowing. Like I think it's almost like showing too much under here. Like I think you could go more graphic with some of that and not show like all these ribs and stuff over there. Like and only
Yeah,
maybe
they're
show
not
some.
needed.
Yeah, show just like a little bit of that detail right here. But like yeah, a lot of that, it's almost like overdone. See, like this, it makes too many shapes. It's like a lot of this can just go under the umbrella of it's a shadow, and just service your storytelling more so than the
Mhm.
literal or the literacy or literal amounts of things going on in there. You can make a few concessions, I'd say, but overall, this is great.
I think they were trying to go for like a sheer fabric on the skeleton though. Like like something that's kind
Yeah.
of through.
Yeah, especially around the face and stuff, you can see that.
Yeah. But no, I agree with you, Tyler.
Just over like there, where there's like a lot of things overlapping, and it's a non-important area compared to like the faces. That's all. Like I love that transparency effect, but I keep it, just like to a few of those select areas.
Yeah, I
Right.
agree. And I think this is another one that I feel like could really do with an edges pass, especially when you get to like the blanket wrapping around her body or the pillows behind her head, like different
Th-
areas like that.
This is the
The
roughest
edges of
area.
things, it gets really muddy. And it's okay for things to get soft if they're not focal areas, but you don't want them to look messy and unfinished and like to feel like there's a huge drop off in
It
like
does feel that's
edge
a little
quality.
unfinished. Because
Yeah, like you want the edges, even if they're not like highly detailed rendered edges, you want them to feel designed. You want it to feel intentional, not like I didn't put any time over here or thought over here. So like especially when you look at like the pillows towards the edge or where the blanket connects with the skeleton, the shadow of the skeleton coming down, and it just gets like choppy, like it looks like you haven't like taken the shadow of the skeleton all the way down. Things like that do a lot to make a painting feel unfinished.
even blurring the corners and some of like the hair edges, little things
Mhm.
like that will add up, quite a bit
Yep.
on an image like this. This is
Yeah,
very
definitely.
real. And what was our thoughts on the background? I thought I was missing a note that I had on.
I remember you mentioning that you really liked the framing of it.
Yeah,
And I
I do like
agree,
the
like
framing.
simplicity of the framing was really nice. I feel like I kind of want to see something on the wall. Like it gets a
Like a
little too
picture or
empty for me.
something like right here.
Yeah, or like maybe like a cross or some sort of ornament on the wall that's kind of like cut
Yeah,
off, like going off of the
like
scene
a
or something.
like a
But just something like so that it feels lived in.
even like a door that is like left open or something,
Mhm.
like
or cloth, like a curtain, like sheer
Yeah, it's, you
curtains
know
can
what I
be
mean?
put
It's
on
just like too simple there. But very
it.
good.
I think I do have to, I want to note the anatomy of the skeleton. The sternum is, I don't know, the rib cage looks too short because I'm counting the ribs. I'm such a nerd. I counted the ribs.
She is.
There's
That's why we
six.
got you here. You're the
Uh,
Do it.
there's 6 ribs. Adult humans
Mhm.
have 10 ribs that are attached and 2 ribs that hang below the rib cage, or they're part of the rib cage, but they're not attached to the sternum. So the rib cage is a little bit too short, and the sternum is a separate piece of cartilage in the
Oh,
middle.
like the,
So
yeah.
it looks like it's fused right now. So I'm not sure what we use as a reference, but it might have been a Halloween skeleton or something because it's not doing what it's supposed to be doing.
Busted. There's always someone out there that knows.
Sorry.
Good. Yeah, good call. Yeah. Shout.
And that's the thing too, is like you want to use reference and you want to make sure your reference is accurate. And like it reminds me too of like I've heard people talking about like even using like symbols or letters like from other languages or from like mythology or history. Like you may not know what the symbols represent, but there's other people out there that do, and they'll know when you're not referencing completely, like when you haven't done your research on your reference. So just take the time to make sure you find things that are really accurate.
Mhm.
Yeah, and just sorry. I think
No, it's a good point.
the skeleton needs a little bit more referencing because I'm looking at it now and there's more bones that are not correct.
Oh, like the
Anyways,
arm?
yeah, the I can't remember the names, but the ulna and the radius, which are the 2 lower like forearm bones.
Yeah.
The radius is like it. One of them is supposed to be smaller than the other one, and I think it's the other way around.
Oh, this is
Um,
the bigger, that's the smaller.
and then the ulna is supposed to go under the other bone, like the bigger one on top, which is the name escapes me right now, but it's not structured quite right. But yeah, um, the anatomy nerd, what can you do?
Yeah.
I mean, but the it's all there. Like the picture is like a solid picture. So if you wanted to
It's
go in and like research like how does this bone work, like it
It's
would be
just gonna
easy
make it
to
better.
fix the arm bones or to like fix
Yeah.
that sternum bone. Like, and it would just give it that extra level of realism and accuracy.
yes, I really still love that piece though. It still looks really good.
Xiao, how do you feel about Damien's piece here?
I like it. It's like it's really, really creepy and it reads. So
Here's an example of when we were referencing that piece at the beginning here with like where Zerius or like of like what like a really impactful camera angle can kind of do on a creepy shot like this. Like we are on the table, and not every picture needs to have us on the table at a Dutch angle, kind of up, up in the nostrils of the characters. Not every picture needs that, but I
But
did
this one,
feel like it adds to the impact of this piece. A
hmm
version of this would have added to the other one as well. It doesn't even need it doesn't need to be this extreme, but yeah, every picture has like a sweet spot in terms of like the
mhm.
storytelling that it can push. This one might be a little darker, I was thinking. I don't know if it's because there's a
Yeah,
lot
and
of
there's a
blacks, right? Like, see, like when we go
yeah.
further, we're seeing stuff that doesn't exist. So I'm guessing it's just a difference in calibration between me and the artists. Like that.
yeah.
I'm guessing this is how it was painted.
This
I
looks
think
like
for
dead
me,
guy.
if I,
Sorry, go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead. No, go ahead.
Zhao, you go.
There's a guy hanging from the ceiling, but it's
Yeah.
kind of. I feel like he's getting a little bit lost.
Yep.
Maybe move him a little bit, or somehow define more of his body. I thought he was a strip of like I thought he was a pillar at the beginning, so maybe it needs a
A
little
little
bit more
further
work.
back, where it hangs a little more independently in the scene. How do you feel about that light? That's a bright, cool light coming in. For me, I think that's almost like a bit much. It's very,
Yeah, I
very
think
strong and powerful.
that was one of the things that threw me off about this piece in general is I feel like the two bright, cool lights are really competing for attention. And they're kind of competing against what makes this scene really
Yeah, 'cause
cool,
you
which
got
is like the
this here.
spooky glowing eyes on the like the decapitated head and stuff. But then like the whole like fridge or cooler full of like glowing blue light and heads in the fridge and stuff, like it's almost like a separate painting that's distracting from the focal point of the painting, and it's like fighting for attention. And I think that in the way that the body hanging is like really downplayed, like it's there but it's downplayed, maybe it could be played up a little more.
This is
I feel
overplayed.
like that's overplayed. Yeah, that really needs to get pushed
really
back
sweet.
and
It's a
stop
hard
complaining.
balance. It's a hard balance.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even realize there was a fridge on that side.
Yeah, see? Like that needs to get like pushed back a little, then this pushed up a little, and then the window subdued just a little, I think would be the balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
So Zhao, is someone that probably uses a similar technique
Yeah.
that Damien did in regards to like using 3D characters, actors, and models to start a base of a painting. Do you still feel these are almost like too 3D-ish in places?
They are. I like you can tell pretty clearly where they've been painted over and where they haven't. I think it needs a little bit more work. Like I can tell the hand has not been painted over. It's just
Yeah, it's not
the-
it's not enough there.
yeah.
I think if I recall from the last time we did this critique, the thing that stood out to me was almost like the posing. It doesn't feel organic or natural. Especially that main character holding the head.
Yeah, it's like the folds on
way
the
that its
clothing.
hand and arm, like it feels posed like a doll or a mannequin. It doesn't feel like a natural weight or movement or gesture.
Would you guys prefer to see like a little bit of that hair out from the face so we could see more of what expression he's trying to give us? It's almost like an easy cop out to not get into that, you know?
I'm kind of on the fence about that, actually. I think it depends on the purpose of the painting. So, like, let's say this was like an illustration, like an interior illustration for a story or something, and you know the characters, you'd kind of want to see the face. If it's like something that's like a book cover or something, it's actually better to not see the face
Yeah.
because then the person can kind of like imagine any character when they're looking at the book cover. So I think it depends on the purpose of the painting to like whether you want to hide or show the face.
Yeah.
So I could go either way on that.
I agree with you. I'm kind of on the fence about that too.
But I do think there is something about the face that feels unfinished or like 3D. Like even if the hair was still obscuring parts of it, there's something that just feels artificial. It doesn't feel real yet.
it's like most of it is 3D. I don't think it's been painted over. Like the hair looks like it's hair cards, so it doesn't look like it was painted over either.
But,
Yeah, and I always say,
Well, it's just a trap or something. It's just a challenge. You get like a really good accurate reference right when using 3D, but then it can be easy or hard, even hard if the 3D model reference is good. It can be hard, and we can have apprehension with going in there and messing it up, especially sometimes too if there's a lack of confidence. 'Cause, on like, what do I actually do to this? How can I make that better? That's some of the it's a different challenge than if you're kind of approaching it entirely all from scratch.
I think what I realized is like, because I work with this workflow, is you can build it in 3D, but always go and find like a real person sort of in kind of a similar pose to reference the actual anatomy. Because like the 3D model isn't going to emulate everything that you need to see in a real person.
Like that
Like
hand.
the hand or the forearm muscle. Like I can tell the forearm muscle's not quite right either. But I would recommend definitely going to find like real models to also work off of.
And it could be as simple as getting like a friend or a family member, a roommate to just like, hey, could you stand there for a minute while you take a picture? Because it's just the way people naturally hold their arms or stand in a certain
At a
position.
whole other level, to the work, because it's a great idea. It's well shot, and there's a lot of really good things here.
Yeah, I think like overall this is we're nitpicking, but this is a fantastic piece. Like it could be polished up and like taken to the next level, but like this is solid. Like you could put this in a portfolio.
All right.
Definitely.
Good
And
entry.
I will say too, I think one of the things that's making the 3D stand out is how well some of the other areas are painted. Like the faces of the decapitated heads on the table, like those look fantastic. Even like though it's not clear enough, but the way that the body hanging in the background, like that's really well
Hmm.
painted. There's a lot of
Table's well
decisions and
done.
edge work there that is really nice. So like if it's a matter of confidence, like just paint it. You can paint it. Like do it.
Yep.
Hmm.
All right. All right, guys. We just duked it out and exchanged words. These are our
It was vicious.
universally are
Vicious,
kind of
I
like our
say.
favorite three. But I think the first two were these were a given for us. All three of us, we love these. We couldn't find on a nice third kind of runner up one, but we landed on yours, Donnie. Thank you for submitting. Chris, it's all just for good fun and stuff. But yeah, these are right. We all thought these were just fantastic. And
Yeah, I think last time Tyler and I had settled on the Sleeping Girl as
mhm,
the first place, and then the other two as runners up. And then the heads on the table was like we had a really hard time not picking that one as first place. And there was I would say the old woman and the skeleton really fought with Donnie's for third place,
yep.
but Donnie won out. So it
Yes.
was a tough
Thank you
call.
all for your wonderful entries in this very fun and well themed challenge that I think was way back in October almost. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's been a while.
I will say thank you for all the really creative ideas. Like I feel like people really kind of stretched for this one and had some really interesting storytelling with their paintings.
And if you want to
Yes.
learn more about how Xiao Fan's whole process works, she's got a video over at Wing Fox. I thought I'd mention that one more time. So
Yeah.
thank you both for helping me out with this. You guys are both in experts in far more things than I'm not in regards to some of these. So I appreciate the backup. All right,
Thank you for inviting
Awesome.
me.
yeah, I'm gonna
Thank
put
you.
whatever I think of the next challenge. That'll be right after this bit. So yeah, stay tuned, guys, and I'll catch you in a minute. Hi, folks. Hope you're all well. So the next community challenge will be a cyberpunk holiday. We'll make it due about December 29th, give or take. All the info will be in the Discord, which is linked below. And everything else you guys need is linked below as well. For a sponsor from Wing Fox, Jess's work, Xiaofan's work, and a link to my Patreon and all the information there. So thank you kindly all for watching, and I'll catch you next time.